everyone to A Moorish Perspective, sponsored by our Moorish American government. As is a custom with Moors, we will begin with prayer, our Moorish American prayer. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Ali. Amen. Now, Moors will have a reading of the Divine Constitution of Moorish America. Salvation, our God, unity. The Divine Constitution of Moorish America, Act 1. The Grand Sheikh and the Chairman of Moorish America are in power to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the Prophet and the Grand Body of Moorish America. The Assistant Grand Sheikh is to assist the Grand Sheikh in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and it is known before the citizens of Moorish America. The Bylaws, Act 2. All meetings are to be open and closed promptly, according to the Circle 7 and love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Friday is our holy day of rest, because on a Friday the first man was formed in flesh, and on a Friday the first man departed out of flesh and ascended unto his Father, God Allah. For that cause, Friday is a holy day for all Muslims all over the world. Act 3. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be proclaimed and practiced by all citizens of Moorish America. No citizen is to put in danger or accuse falsely his brother or sister on any occasion at all that may harm his brother or sister, because Allah is love. Act 4. All citizens must preserve these holy and divine laws, and all citizens must obey the laws of the government, because by being a Moorish American, you are a part and parcel of the government and must live the life accordingly. Act 5. No organization of Moorish America is to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. Act 6. With us, all citizens must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and a parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Ali the Prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Act 7. All citizens must promptly attend their meetings and become a part and a partial of all uplifting acts of Moorish America. Moorish Americans must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of Moorish America, and then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Ali, through the guidance of his Father, God Allah. Thus, Moors, the meeting has been declared open according to Act 2, the Circle 7, and love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Islam. At this time, Moors, we'll have a reading of Chapter 40, but before we do, first of all, I want to rise, giving all praises to our Father, God Allah, giving the most special honor to our Prophet, Noble Ali, the last prophet in these days and times, giving honor to our Moorish American government, all of our officials, staff, with angels, muftis, divine ministers, most especially our Moorish kin. Giving honor to a Moorish perspective this evening and to our host instructor, our National Assistant Grand Sheikh, Dr. Shahid Shabazz L. I am Sister Aisha, Pleasant Bay Grand National Secretary. Chapter 40, Holy Instructions from the Prophet, the Instability of Man. Inconstancy is powerful in the heart of man. Intemperance swayeth it, whither it will. Despair engrosseth much of it. And fear proclaimeth, Behold, I sit unrivaled therein. But vanity is beyond them all. Weep not, therefore, at the calamities of the human state. Rather, laugh at its follies. In the hands of the man addicted to vanity, life then is but the shadow of a dream. The hero, the most renowned of human character, what is he but the bubble of this weakness? The public is unstable and ungrateful. Why should the man of wisdom endanger himself for fools? The man who neglecteth his present concerns to revolve how he will behave when greater feedeth himself with wind, while his bread is eaten by another. Act as becometh thee in thy present station, and in more exalted ones thy face shall not be ashamed. What blindeth the eye, or what hideth the heart of a man from himself like vanity? Lo, when thou seest not thyself, then others discover thee most plainly. As the tulip that is gaudy without smell, conspicuous without use, so is the man who sitteth himself up so high and hath not merit. The heart of the vain is troubled, while it seemeth content. His cares are greater than his pleasures. His solicitude cannot rest with his bones. The grave is not deep enough to hide it. He extendeth his thoughts beyond his being. He bespeaketh praise to be paid when he is gone, but whosoever promiseth it deceiveth him. As the man who engageth his wife to remain in widowhood, that she disturb not his soul, so is he who expecteth that his praise shall reach his ears beneath the earth, or cherish his heart in a shroud. Do well whilst thou livest, but regard not what is said of it. Content thyself with deserving praise, and thy posterity shall rejoice in hearing it. As the butterfly who seeth not his own colors, as the jasmine which feeleth not the scent it casteth around it, so is the man who appeareth gay, and biddeth others to take note of it. To what purpose, saith he, is my vesture of gold? To what end are my tables filled with dainties, if no eye gaze upon them, if the world knows it not? Give thy raiment to the naked, and thy food unto the hungry. So shalt thou be praised, and feel that thou deservest it. Why bestowest thou in every man the flattery of unmeaning words? Thou knowest, when returned thee, thou regardest it not. He knoweth he lieth unto thee, yet he knoweth thou wilt thank him for it. Speak in sincerity, and thou wilt hear with instruction. The vain delighteth to speak of himself, but he seeth not that others like not to hear him. If he hath done anything worth praise, if he possesseth that which is worthy of admiration, his joy is to proclaim it, his pride to hear it reported. The desire of such a man defeateth itself. Men say not, Behold, he hath done it, or See, he possesseth it, but mark how proud he is of it. The heart of man cannot attend at once to too many things. He who fixeth his soul on show loseth reality. He pursueth bubbles which break in their flight, while he treads to earth what would him honor. Islam. So at this time, without further delay, Moors, we're going to call forth our own National Assistant Grand Sheikh, Divine Minister Dr. Shahid Shabazz L., who is our host instructor this evening, to lead us into a Moorish perspective. Islam, Brother National Assistant Grand Sheik. Are you there, Moore? Star 6.
Islam, Sister Aisha.
Islam, gratitude, Moore.
Yes, ma'am. That's the attitude. Islam, 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 Moorish America. On this day I rise and give all praise to Allah and honors to His holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, El Hajj Sharif Abdul Ali, that is. We give honors to our Moorish kin here, there, and everywhere, and therefore honors to all of you who are honoring yourselves by being yourselves. We also want to give honors to our beloved brother, the Harbinger, Brother Marcus Mosiah Garvey, for being one who has opened up the way and prepared the way for the coming of the King. And we want to also give honors to all of our Moorish kin who are here on the front lines, demonstrating and exercising the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Tonight's subject matter that we will be dealing with is entitled The Death, Burial, and Exhumation of the African God-Man. And when we begin to hear this particular title, we should automatically get a drawing off of knowing where we come from and also having a full insight or goodly knowledge of where we are going. When we begin to talk about the death, the burial, and the exhumation of the African God-Man, and how this actually relates to these foes that we are dealing with, that we have to strive against in this era and time and overcome, we will see the effects, that are a manifestation of a cause that didn't have nothing to do with us being a stable people. Yet we will expose where this instability derives from that we have in regards to dealing with the self, as the great God willeth for us to be able to get a drawing. When we talk about the death, a lot of times we think that this means one leaves the body physically and they are buried, underground. This is what comes to mind, and they will never be seen again, and this is it. You have funerals and all these types of demonstrations. But what we are going to demonstrate tonight is that there's a death that has taken place, and there is a burial that is continuously taking place among those who are perceived to be living. It was also stated that one day the dead would walk amongst us. So if the dead will walk amongst us, then indeed there would have to be an entombing or some sort of casket, that these ones would be housed in. We can look at the tomb itself as being, from this aspect, it can be your physical body if you are a slave to that. And if your vibration is so slow and sluggish to where you can't think, you can't will, you can't reason, you can't understand, you can't remember the great God who made you. This is a terrible state to be in. The state in which our holy prophet found us in. A state that none of those who are conscious would like to return to. And when you begin to speak of the exhumation, the drawing out, or the revealing, or we can use the term, if you want to, resurrecting, bringing one out of a hidden state to be made manifest in order that the world may see you as you truly are. Meaning what was done to you, and also how you was able to overcome such a tragedy. We have been getting a lot of history, a lot of information from a lot of officials that have been demonstrating in our classes, and we want to give honors to all of you once more for that. We have the history. We know now all of those who perpetrated our enslavement, all of those who were in cahoots, all of those who actually stand today at the ready to make sure that we remain, buried people. We received all of these different demonstrations. And all of this led up into this present time, and is the reason why we can't unite as a people. It is why we can't recognize that we have a holy prophet. It is why that we can't recognize that there is a problem in regards to dealing with ourselves, that in which we have to overcome. We don't have a desire to strive toward self-mastery, less knowing, even acknowledging that we have to master anything. And this is a result of a dead people, therefore stagnation. I want to read something from the exhuming of a nation, because this is where our exhumation derives from. And we want to give honor to our Grand National Chairman. It's actually coming from, it's coming from page 82. And it's entitled The Shallow Grave of Western, the Shallow Grave of Freemasonry. Now, this particular demonstration here is being read in order that we may get a fuller drawing off of the exhumation of the African God-man. And listen to what was written here by the angels. On the particular page, you will see that there's a casket. And the casket has nails in it, and it has an acacia tree at the head. And upon the casket, you will see what appears to be a flag draped over the coffin. And this flag has a 5-pointed open star upon it. So therefore, a lot of times when you see a particular casket, when one is being buried, and if there's any type of inscription on that casket, then it's actually a representation of the body that is within the casket. Different people, when they bury their relatives, and if their relatives may have, had some particular ensign, that they held with high esteem, then as they may have wanted this to be placed on here. Or sometime it just be according to the will of one who feels that this is the way that, we should send one home. So we're going to place this inscription or ensign there. However, in this case, we see a casket with all that was described a few minutes ago, and it actually, in this picture, is telling a story. This is the picture that you will find among the literatures of Western Freemasonry. And we know that the acacia tree itself is indigenous to the Holy Land, or the East, if you will. And when you look at this particular banner, this is actually the banner that is always being waved today in this era in time by the Moors. The flag of Morocco they have on here, which is signifying that the one who is inside of this particular coffin, if you look at where the particular tree is indigenous to, then the one who is there, encased therein, would have to be none other than the African God-man. Now, the Europeans like to use the terminology HIRAM, abyss. But in all actuality, when we get into it, we're going to find out the drawing here in this particular portion of the Exhuming of a Nation, what this actually means. It says, who's buried there? This is the question that we get. And then it goes on in parentheses to state what European master masons do not want their profane world to know. And it goes on, it says, I have come to take the cover off of all the secret societies. This was our holy prophet who stated this. It goes on, it says, the real foundation of Western Freemasonry rests upon an awful murder. This murder is the pogrom, a pogrom, of the God-man of the Nile, African kings and indigenous African nationals. This capital crime included the subjugation of Africa through the dousing of the light in Egypt and the obscurity of the true Garden of Eden. This homicide is disguised in the constitution of Freemasonry as the killing of HIRAM, the widow's son. The embodiment of this slaying is unquestionably the master crime of the times. HIRAM's death depicts a history from the physical African man, the first physical African man, to be enlightened with the wisdom to the last mankind, European, to become civilized with knowledge, and back again. To understand this murder is to free the Negro from his disguised grave of perpetual slavery, using the only divine key that would separate this mystery, secret, from where it is lodged in Freemasonry. Although Freemasonry is not a religious order, it is predominantly structured from the Bible, the Torah, from the Vedas, and the Holy Quran. All of these books lay open on the Masonic altars, pending the height of their degrees. The parable of Hiram Abiff can be found in the Torah, Old Testament, 1 Kings, in the 7th, to describe, well, in this chapter, actually, this Masonic history is more of a cover than a book. It is similar to the fallacy of having a criminal describe his own crime. Because of these covert activities, it would take this chapter written in layman terms to explain these magnanimous essences to the need to know. Since this murder has not been publicly reported, the true characters will be revealed because there is no innocence to protect. Not only has this murder gone unreported, but also because of the great conspiracy, those who have been most victimized now carry the black mark of death, yet does not realize he is dead. Yet both the murderer and the death are real. Islam. Now, you can't get it no plainer than that. In this particular drawing is going to take us into a deeper degree of this particular lesson, especially when we talk about these marks of death that was put on our people. So now that we have a knowledge of the death, a knowledge of the burial, and therefore a knowledge of the shallow grave in which one was buried in, we can go into this with a clear conception, because we are going to see how this is actually a manifestation of what is the reason why we can't come into a grasp of who we are as gods. For those who came out of the biblical doctrine, our holy prophet stated that, we as Moors, he wanted us to keep those particular documents, on hand. Don't throw them away, don't get rid of them, because he was going to use these particular teachings to condemn the Europeans, or condemn the government, that is established, if you will. I'm using this terminology to bring about a clarity, because, you don't just go around and condemn, a European because he's a European, but we are speaking of those who have been in power and have had, a pseudo-authority anyway, and utilize this authority in order to further bury our people. In the biblical demonstration, you will see of there being a talk, and I spoke on this a while back, I think it was, of a good Samaritan. And this is for those who came out of this particular doctrine, that they may be able to get a draw, and also that one may be able to take this demonstration to those ones who are under that particular degree, and it may give them some clarity of what we stand on. But it was a talk of a good Samaritan, one who actually came forth to aid and assist one who traveled on a journey. They say he actually fell from Jerusalem into Jericho. And if you go and you look that up, you will find that Jerusalem means a place of peace. This is a place founded upon peace. And Jericho itself represents confusion. Now, we know we talk about having the ability to think, reason, will, understand, and remember. And we know that if we can't do these things, then we are confused. But if we were in a state of knowing that man means thinker, and that we are a thought of the great God, Allah made manifest, then we know that if we came from a place that was founded upon peace, then this would be the state of man being a thinker. Because he, in his thinking, would reflect the thoughts of the great God who made him manifest from thought. And thought, we know, is the exercise of strength. Yet we know that without a foe, a soldier never knows his strength. So therefore, the things that man goes through, the trials, the tests, will also be those things, if seen in a positive light, by which he can mount up and return into oneness with his Father God, Allah. But this good Samaritan and this man who fell from a state of peace into a state of confusion, it has a relation to one that which is similar to the story of the HIRAM Abyss legend. Now, it was said that this one was beat, and bruised, and, I'm just using a modern terminology, but he was stripped of his clothes. He was left half dead. And I began to draw on this particular demonstration when I was doing my research, and I say, man, half dead. And I began to think about our state and us being 3/5, considered 3/5 under the United States Constitution. I began to think about those demarcations that not only divided us from a continental perspective, but also caused our minds to become divisive to the extent to where we can't even see our original origin as those who are a people, one people. So being left half dead is to be merely the soul, the body, the flesh, even having a mind, but yet without the ability to operate or use either for the freedom of oneself. You might as well be dead outright, because basically that's what you are. That's what we are. When we are not able to think for ourselves, when we are not able to build for ourselves, whatever the case may be, anything that deals with our freedom, if we can't see this far, then we are a dead people, and this is what we were declared under these particular codes and acts, and so much that documents that represent freedom become a dead letter law. Anytime you don't proclaim who you are as a people, and you allow yourself to be buried, and you don't try to come out of the captivation or confine that you have been placed within, then this is considered that you give consent of being enslaved. But speaking of being left half dead, we had everything taken from us. Our divine creed, our nationality, and here we lay in a shallow grave of the 14th and 15th Amendments, assumable jurisdiction. Now we had the Jewish priesthood here amongst us. They seen us in the state that we was in, but they walked right by us. You had the Roman priesthood over here, see us in this condition, and they walked right by us. And the reason they walked by us because they was benefiting from us being in this dead, half-dead state, if you will. So you didn't have to worry about them trying to aid and assist you. But then came a good Samaritan who seen us in the condition that we was in and came to us and began to help us cleanse our wounds. Otherwise, cleanse our minds from NBC thought patterns. Cleanse our hearts. How? With love. And this in turn was also love that was utilized to purify our minds. And therefore establish for us an end, as they called it in the biblical text, and set us on our own. They use the term as in biblical, but we know that here we have a Bactrian camel, and this is the symbol of the Pleasant Bay tribe. So we know this represents endurance. So all of this was brought by our holy prophet, and he was the one who was the good Samaritan. He seen us in this condition, and he raised us out of a state of being servants to a people that really were no people into being a master nation. So when you really look at the legend of HIRAM, and we talk about the exhumation of the African God-man, we can look at this from many different perspectives or degrees. We can go all the way back to Kemet, and we can see how there was an attack on the civilization. Even the name HIRAM itself, if you go back into the ancient Kemetian tongue, and you see that there's a term, Heru, and you connect that with the universal mantra Om, and we know that Heru actually represents the noble spirit. This connects us to our divine creed. It also puts us on a level of vibration where we are vibrating according to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. This is that golden cord. And we are united from heart to heart. And this is where that care comes from that continues, because this love itself is so strong that it will make us a nation of people again. But this particular love thought was removed from our hearts, and we became a people who began to hate. We were taught to hate, after we were enslaved and naturally exemplified because it was placed within our essence. These were attributes of the great God. But somebody else taught us to be in opposition, to hate our brother man, to hate our nation, to hate even the idea of being a family. So when you begin to look at this, if you go into the document that was given a while back, the Grand Sisla, it was mentioned there in the area where you see the inverted five-pointed star on the Moroccan flag, and beneath that you see the Shriner's jewel or emblem. There was a measure given on what is called the double Victorian tiger claw. Because the common misconception amongst the masses is that the symbol of a shrine is that of an Islamic crescent. But in all actuality, the true meaning behind it, it actually is two claws. But this particular emblem would actually be found in Queen Victoria's belongings. And actually, this is the true secret of Queen Victoria, or rather, Victoria's secret. And I know a lot of the Moors have, probably asked that, what is Victoria's secret? What's so big about this secret that, it's so expensive and, you got to have it. This was the type of thing, the cologne and the perfume, the clothing. The secret is that we, as a nation, are the best kept secret. This is why the Godhead in the divine name of the great God, if you look at that particular emblem, you will see it has Allah upside down, which is basically blasphemy or disrespect to the great God. And this was done because she knew who the God-man really was. She knew that the God-man, being the thought of Allah, was a manifestation of the great God. And therefore, she began to make war upon that God-man and the nation in which he governed. And she took pride in receiving a title that they called the Great White Hunter. Now, when you talk about the word white, we know that we are taught that white means purity. Purity means God, and God means the ruler of the land. And she knew that this terminology, according to those who were ancient and those who were nobles, was actually a title that referred to the original people who were indigenous to the earth. Yet, she began to claim this title for herself and send her, we can say, hitmen out, and they call themselves the Great White Brotherhood. We know who the true Great White Brotherhood really is. You're talking about those white-clad soldiers, or those of the Silent Brotherhood of the East. But, these counterfeit soldiers, if you will, they were the hunters. And the African God-man became the hunted. And this particular, we can say, war delegation a declaration, was actually one that was to be perpetual. Like our Grand National Chairman speak, of the matter of the treaty of our enslavement forever and a day. And the fatal death blow of the God-man was actually the subjugation of those who descend from the nation that came through the bloodline of Ruth, the Moabites. Because this is the same bloodline Yahushua came through, as well being the same bloodline that we come through. And if you put a T on the front of the name Ruth, then we can actually get to the truth of the matter. But the fatal death blow was the subjugation, therefore, of also our Moorish woman. And being that the woman was subjugated, our holy prophet came forth, 1 foot on the land, 1 foot in the water. And when he came forth in this manner, he was showing us what it meant to uplift fallen humanity. And that if we came forth demonstrating, then we know that it was our obligation to uplift our nation as a whole. And our nation can be uplifted when we have a family structure. Because family structure in itself is governmental structure. The same laws which govern the universe, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, are the same laws which governs the Moorish family. So everything that we demonstrate here is that in which we demonstrate by nature. You always hear me say a lot of times that we didn't have to be taught how to love because we were loved. We was demonstrating it. We didn't have to be taught truth, peace, freedom, and justice because, we were demonstrating it. This is where we were functioning on all points at maximum efficiency. In this state, we didn't have to worry about a foe that had to be fought. But yet when we came into a fallen state, due to the death blow of being denationalized, the death blow of being enslaved, the death blow of being deceived, this is basically what has placed us in a state to where we could barely see how to find our way back home. We have to be able to trace ourselves back through the ages as masterminds do. But we can only do this when our minds have been delivered from the enslavement of the lower self, or those illusions of the children of male. See, we know that all of this that was done to us, that we have experienced, in our time as well as what our ancestors experienced. All these things were done to keep HIRAM from rising from this shallow grave of assumable jurisdiction with healing in his wings. when you go into the biblical and they talk about Lazarus and resurrection of the dead and all these particular demonstrations, what does this mean? Because Yahushua, according to that particular document, actually stated that that Lazarus wasn't dead, he was asleep. Our holy prophet told us that we Moors, shouldn't sleep much, but that we should wake up. Don't sleep no more at all, period. So when you talk about the resurrection or the exhumation of the dead, our chairman mentioned some more points in the Book of Fire, and he gave us a couple of definitions of dead. And it's actually on page 33. Listen to this, Moors, because a lot of time when we think of, a lot of time we see the word black mean death. Okay, that's the main drawing that we have out of the 101s. But in the exhuming of a nation, it's taken further, where it states, so-called black people seem to have everything that all other people have except there's black. But since the word black basically means to be without life and the absence of light, it raises the question, what do black people really own? The answer is already circumscribed within the true etymology of the word black. Just substitute any of the true common meaning of the adjective black, as in death, lifeless, or dead. Then place it in front of any subject generally used in association with so-called black people. And oh snap, will they be surprised at the game that has been played on them ever since 1652. Now let's apply the word black to its everyday assumable uses in the only country on earth that makes these people with black minds. Remember, the true etymology of the word black has always meant dead. Dead man, for example. Dead woman. Dead history. Dead communities. Dead organizations. Dead teachers. Now notice the word black that is normally used in these cases is being replaced with dead, because this is the meaning that we have. Dead schools, a dead race, dead movies, dead life, dead business, dead justice, dead ideals, heroes, criminals, books, language, crimes, dead clothes, thoughts, caucus, leaders, theaters, themed, dead churches, Muslims, alliance, love, policemen, employment, dead news, children, family, flag, doctors, universities, dead place, athletes, power, bands, lawyers, consciousness, dead politicians, dead God, dead religions, dead people, dead power, dead pride. All of these things at some point we have associated with the term black, if we didn't know no better. And if we don't need to be exhumed from that type of thinking, man, I don't know what to say. But we often have those of Western Freemasonry who like to boast of being raised from a dead level to a living perpendicular. This is what they tell you now. I'm talking about the NBC. If you have been raised from a dead level, then this means that you are a living individual. But if you are not able to bring life to your people, if you can't bring freedom to your people, then how can you be living? For those who like to, utilize that term among our people in general, how can you be raised from a dead level, but yet remain in a condition where you are under the pain of death and can't get from under it? Every day you get beat down by the police just for looking disgruntled. I seen the video recently up there in Detroit. They had two brothers walking into a gas station, and they say that the police up there just got a hold to him because he felt like he looked disgruntled. He looked angry. So we're going to set him straight. Really, you don't even have to look disgruntled. All you got to do is look him in the eye and scare him half to death. Let him see the God in you. That's enough to get you took off the manifest. But how is it impossible for one to be raised from a dead level and be considered living while one remains NBC? When you remain one who is subject to the Negro Act. When you remain one who is subject to black laws. When you remain one who is bound due to the color of law. I seen a picture that just recently surfaced with our brother El Hajj Malik Shabazz, brother Malcolm X, as they called him in the Nation of Islam. I seen a picture where he demonstrated in his time, he was talking about that term Negro. And he broke it all the way down into necro and necrosis, which means also death or dead. But the interesting part up there, he had it on a blackboard, is he put the word, well, not the word, he actually put the term 3/5 up there. So therefore, he was actually demonstrating the science. And in regards to dealing with this particular teaching, our holy prophet was the one who began to teach us, about this term black, or these terms Negro and colored and so forth and so on. He was the one who brought not just a methodology, but he brought the solution. Noble Drew Ali brought the solution that would uplift us and raise us, exhume us as one people, as a whole, a nation. But why haven't we been able to take hold to each other with our hand clasp of unity? Not in a Freemasonic way. Why haven't we been able to unite? It is because of the foes, the opposition. It's because we would rather remain prince thinkers. And we know what prince thinkers are, those who have read that demonstration, rather than being a master nation. We can only do what we have been placed here to do. So when you hear the officials getting up here speaking, and giving instruction, we don't give instruction from the standpoint that, there is no mastery that we don't have to obtain. There are not foes that we don't have to conquer. We're giving you experience. And pretty much all of us have had similar experiences. And it is through these experiences, them being spoken upon or mentioned, that will allow us to realize that we are not alone. All of us have came through these particular situations all of us have risen beyond the pitfalls of human knowledge, and we are striving into the pinnacle of wisdom, back to that state in which we originally dwelled before the fall. This is what we are concerned with. So when we talk about those five folds, in all actuality, we are just demonstrating that these particular demonstrations exist. These and more that have not been mentioned. And in order to be properly equipped, we have to have a working knowledge of ourselves, both the higher and the lower self. Otherwise, it'll be easy for somebody to come and take us off counts, utilizing emotion, utilizing the hatred, utilizing misdirected and misguided passion against our own kin, and therefore dividing us and conquering us. When we are dealing with being enslaved by the five folds, or those children of Maya, in all actuality, we see the result of the setting mall of Jubilee. Or when you talk about the three, Jubilo, Jubellum, Jubilee. When you go into all these three individuals right here, each one of them had an instrument that was utilized in the murder of HIRAM. I think one had the setting mall, as we mentioned earlier. One had a rule, and I think the other might have had a square or something like that right there, they say he had. But anyway, these particular instruments were used in order to make us, therefore, blind, deaf, and dumbed down people. You know, if somebody get hit in the head hard enough, they lose all their motor skills and the ability, to utilize their speech, the ability to utilize, their thinking apparatus. All of these things, become naught. You become, like a vegetable state if you get hit hard enough. You just existing. And that's what we call a death. One walking dead. So when we talk about being blind, deaf, and dumbed down, we can also look at a parable that they have, I think, in the biblical when they talk about the 5 wise and the 5 foolish virgins. The 5 wise, dealing with the pinnacle of wisdom, will actually represent love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Those who are able to think on this level. But when you deal with the 5 foolish, and also when you think of the term virgin they use in the biblical, when you normally think of a virgin, you talking about one that is pure, has not been mixed, tampered, or diluted with, in any shape or form. So, in other words, your thoughts are impregnable, just like the doctrine in which we store in our minds, hearts, and souls when we're talking about the teachings of our holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali. The foolish, therefore, we know are those who have allowed, their innocence to be taken away from them, by the lower self, those 5 folds. And therefore have become guided by Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, beast. These can actually become you on a full manifestation. They can become us, me, anybody for that matter, if we are not striving to become the highest of the high. Even they say, I think they even get what the definition is. They say to HIRAM is supposed to be highborn or something like that. Well, our holy prophet was highborn. Matter of fact, the name Ali itself means the most high. It's one thing to be highborn, but he was the most high, meaning he was one with his Father God, Allah. And we are striving to obtain those same heights. But we have to demonstrate the love in order to get back into that particular station. We have many different organizations out here. I like to call them the prodigal sons, and daughters of Ali. I use that title because I know you got some more that like to be, affiliated, on a Masonic degree, and they like to use this as if it's something slick. So when I utilize it in regards to dealing with our holy prophet, we're going to call them prodigal sons and daughters of Ali, because they ain't found their way back home yet, even though the government has been here on the manifest for a long time now. All those organizations that came after the transition of our holy prophet, all of them can be traced back to the teaching that was brought. No matter how you try to mix it up, break it down, bend it up or twist it, everything can be traced back to our holy prophet. Even the one to come right behind our prophet, when you talk about the Nation of Islam, in all actuality, the foundation of that particular demonstration was established upon a fear due to what they had seen, that gangster mentality would bring about when they seen what happened to our holy prophet. So, our brother Elijah Poole Bay, he even changed the temple that they was in when they started calling themselves the Allah Temple for Rod and them. He changed that to the Nation of Islam. He didn't want to be associated with that because that Allah's temple was originally associated with being a temple of the Moors. And he stopped the brothers from wearing the fez, and he also taught he had a message for the black man. He was scared to use the name Moor because he was in a state of fear. He was running for his life if you read the history on him. So if he was running for his life, then we can understand, this fear. And this we know also is one of the illusions, of male. And so a particular degree brought from this level, even though there was a work that was being done, it was just being done in order to keep, you can say, a slight crack, open in regard to dealing with the door of truth. To keep the people just conscious enough to where when we come into the year 2000, that all of us can come into our own. As a matter of fact, I was reading a while back a particular demonstration where the brother Elijah Poole Bay stated this, and this was in the Theology of Time, and I like quoting from that particular writing of that brother because actually a lot of them brothers in the Nation of Islam don't even, they scared of this particular book even though they don't understand it really. The reason they don't understand it because they don't understand Islamism. And he made a statement in his works, and he said, one thing I must remind you of. He said, I can't accept you working for me unless you want to be right, right? He said, if you don't want to be right, he said, you won't be working for me. I will be working against you. But then he says, I want you to know these things, professional people, that I am here to lay the foundation for a new world, a new government. And we can't follow the old world and its government, which we have known. We are going to build a new government, and the government is the government of righteousness. And the hereafter means after the destruction of the wicked and their wicked government. That is what we mean when we say the hereafter. And the hereafter is coming soon for America, and she is first to be destroyed because she has mistreated us terribly wrong, until God is tired of waiting on us to make up our minds to leave evil and come over to righteousness. Now, I read this particular demonstration for this reason. Now, we know those who claim to follow that brother in this era and time, they are not going anywhere near a government. Matter of fact, they're going into Scientology. And I don't say that to be disrespectful. And they going into basically back into the arms of slavery. So if he spoke of laying a foundation for a government, now if they was coming into a governmental thought, it's only one government that can be brought. And they would have to have their own constitution. They would have to have their own flag. They would have to have their own divine emblem, their own seal. And this would make them a nation. But we know that the nation of Islam don't have any of those things. The flag that they demonstrate with is a flag from Turkey. You know, they ain't never describe themselves as having a constitution. So we know that if the brother was laying a foundation, as he say, for a government, you know, maybe, who knows, you know, that thought was put in his mind because, you know, the foundation that was laid, you know, was basically to bring a return back to that which already was. So therefore, they would have to return back to the source from whence they come. And I get his measure tonight because this measure and this message is going to be necessary when it comes down to reaching out to those brothers as well as our family that come through the biblical demonstration. So not only are we dealing with the foes, but we also dealing with, you know, being able to reach out to those, you know, who are in need. Because if they don't get it right, if we don't get it right, we all in trouble. And we want to go into talking about those, and I'm getting ready to open up the floor for the Moorish kin as well. But we want to talk about those as well who